Hello again to another Agricola React, and today we will be watching Why Couldn't the Romans Conquer Ireland from No Lygia, to the channel, and I just jump into it and see why did that happen? Why didn't that happen, actually?
Why didn't Rome conquer Ireland? At its height, the Roman Empire held most of Europe, from the Atlantic coast to the Caspian Sea, but it never took the island of Hibernia, or as you may know it, Ireland. A great deal of Rome's territorial conquests came not in the time when it was an empire, but when it was the Republic. And this Republic's expansion through Western Europe was done rather quickly. Before the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE, Rome had little considered expansion outside of the Italian peninsula, and they hadn't even fully conquered that. As it repeatedly defeated Carthage, Rome won more territory. First, the island of Sicily, then Corsica and Sardinia, then parts of North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. By 146 BCE, in addition to the territories taken from Carthage, Rome also held Greece and Macedonia, and had made inroads into the Middle East. After the war was over, they established the first Gallic Roman province in 121 BCE, in the area known as Provence. Within a couple of decades, the Roman army was embroiled in a war to help their Gallic allies against the Germanic tribes of the Teutons and Ambrones. Trade expanded here, but the Romans were far too distracted with internal politics to consider invading this territory that would one day become France. This changed in 59 BCE, when Gaius Julius Caesar ended his consulship and arranged to be named the general in charge of conquering Gaul. Thus began the Gallic Wars, which, by the end of the decade, brought Gaul under Roman rule. Caesar had an opportunity to push further across the English Channel to Britannia. He made two invasions, the first in the late summer of 55 BCE, and the second the next year. The first was largely unsuccessful. Storms wrecked some of his ships, and large groups of Britons prevented the remaining ones from easily landing. The second invasion was informed by the first, the most important lessons being to start with a larger force and have regularly scheduled supply shipments. They also set out much earlier in the summer. In response, the Britons came together under the warlord Cassivellaunus, who led them in guerrilla tactics, harassing Caesar's men, knowing they could not defeat them in a pitched battle. Still, the Roman army pushed on to the Thames River, which they found fortified with underwater stakes, and Cassivellaunus's men on the other side. They had done their best, but the Britons were no match for the Roman archers, and they soon retreated. Caesar found an ally in another tribe of Britons, the Trinovantes, who had recently been warring against Cassivellaunus. With this local help, the Britons were forced to surrender. Caesar made arrangements for tribute, but left no soldiers to enforce them. He had not intended to fully conquer Britannia with this venture, but to cut off potential support to the Gauls, and to show the Britons what they could expect should they decide to cross the Channel and get involved in wars against Rome. By the time Caesar returned to Rome from his Gallic conquests, a civil war was brewing.
This ad already. That was quick. Yeah, so, sorry guys, I'm kinda recording on a bit new setup, and it's proving a bit difficult for me. Obviously I did learn about the Roman Empire and things like that, and trying to conquer the Britain and France and pretty much all of the Europe as well and things like that. So it's something that I don't think I paid that much attention at history lessons. So a lot of those things that was said here are just kind of new, or it's just something that I haven't really paid attention to it. And oh yeah, that's Adam's click. And yeah, so far, obviously I knew about the war with Gauls. Sorry, like I said previously, I had my I finished my education, proper education, in the school in Poland, more than 20 years ago now, and everything was in Polish. So some of the English names are just doesn't really tell me much. I probably would understood and kind of know what's going on more if I hear that in Polish, but this is all still learning. So okay, let's go back here, and the volume is up, and we have to go. There you go.
And the Roman Republic had given way to the Roman Empire, now under the leadership of an emperor rather than the Senate and people. It took until the mid-30s CE for the Romans to give serious consideration to returning to Britannia. The Emperor Caligula led an expedition in 40 CE, but was stopped by Neptune, because he believed that they had argued, and the god of the sea refused to allow his men to cross. Caligula ordered his soldiers to wade into the water and attack it, until he declared Neptune was retreating and they had won. The emperor then called off the invasion, and instead had his men collect pretty seashells and rocks from the shore as their spoils of war. Despite the failure of this attempt, the military leadership had made good plans for the invasion and subjugation of the island, which could be used by the next emperor, Claudius, along with some of his own making, to finally bring Britannia fully under Roman control. The defeat of the warlord Caratacus in 43 CE and making Britannia a Roman province was the crowning achievement of Emperor Claudius's reign. It would not have been unreasonable for the Romans to have continued across to take the rest of the British Isles, but this was not the case. There are a few reasons that Rome never conquered Ireland. First, the Britons did not bow down to Roman control quickly or meekly. The early governors of the province spent most of their time putting down rebellions, most notably the one led by Boudica, queen of the Iceni, in 61 CE. These rebellions were ironically a reason to invade Ireland, as it could be used as a stronghold against the Romans in Britain, as Caesar had feared was being done in Britain for the Gauls. Imperial politics also played a major role. The Julio-Claudius dynasty collapsed under Claudius's successor, Nero, whose suicide prompted an 18-month period in which 4 men successively took control, and 3 lost it. Once the government was again stable under the first of the Flavian emperors, Vespasian, some attention could be given to the British Isles. Vespasian and his successors largely chose good men to rule Britannia, and left them to do their jobs. The best known of these is Gnaeus Julius Agricola, best known in part because of his accomplishments, but likely more due to the fact that his son-in-law, Publius Cornelius Tacitus, is one of the most important sources for Roman history of this period. If Rome was ever going to conquer Ireland, it would have been by Agricola, at the head of its legions. By the time of his governorship, 78 to 85 CE, the Britons had a few generations of Roman rule, and while there was still some small rebellions, the Romans were looking to expand beyond their few settlements in southwest England. They had pushed into Wales under Aulus Plautius, and moved northwest as well. Agricola spent much of his time as governor expanding into Caledonia. While conducting one of these expeditions, Agricola came to know an exiled Irish king, and both hoped to use the other for their own purposes. Agricola saw an opportunity in helping him to retake his throne, thereby creating an ally and removing Ireland as a haven for anti-Roman sentiment. The king would likely have been happy to have Roman help, even if it meant they would exact a tribute. Tacitus does not tell us the Irish king's name, but many believe it to have been the legendary king Tuala Tekmar, who was overthrown and exiled around this time. Agricola's knowledge of the island, aside from whatever the king told him, would have been based on coastal surveys and information from merchants and traders. Whatever they told him, he wasn't terribly impressed. He told his son-in-law, a single legion with a few auxiliaries could conquer and occupy Ireland. He would likely also have read the work of Pomponius Mela, who said the island was of little use for growing grain, but was excellent for livestock. It is so luxuriant with grass, not only abundant, but sweet. that livestock stuff themselves in a fraction of the day, and unless they are kept from the pasture, they burst from feeding too long. For all that Mela found the grass worthy of praise, he did not extend any to the island's inhabitants, who he described as undisciplined and ignorant of all virtue, to a greater degree than any other nation, and they are very much inexperienced in piety.
Oh, wow, not bad. I think the same one too. Okay, so it's kind of interesting that there is no name for that Irish king. That's one thing. The second thing, obviously the Roman thing didn't really, the governor didn't really have much true information about Ireland. And yeah, so that's all I have to say for now. Because honestly, none of that. It's just kind of going like. I think the biggest reason why it was that they had trouble with actually conquering Britain first, and even that they were thinking about going past, and so there would be no much help for Britain from Ireland. But still, I think that's not that smart of a reason to go to Ireland just before you actually, because it's further away and it would probably be harder for them to be able to get supplies and stuff. Excuse me.
In all of this, an invasion of Ireland made sense for the Romans. They expected it would require little effort, and they would be rewarded with the removal of a potential rebel sanctuary, and a place that could produce abundant hides for leather and vellum, if not also the meat. And so Agricola set up a camp in that part of Britain which looks toward Ireland, hoping for fresh conquests rather than fearing attack. Archaeologists have confirmed this, finding evidence of fortifications in this area, in addition to trade markets. Agricola's opportunity was lost, however, to rebellions in Scotland that demanded his full attention. By the time he had finished with these, his governorship had ended and he returned to Rome. And so the opportunity to bring Ireland into the Roman Empire was lost. But this does not mean there was no interaction between the Irish and the Romans. Trade had existed between Ireland and Britain long before any foreign conquests. This continued, and now included the Roman inhabitants of the island. Roman coins can be found all over Ireland, along with gold and silver Roman jewelry, and the remains of amphorae that held olive oils and wine. There is even a Roman-style grave near Stonyford Co, Kilkenny, making it seem likely that at least one Roman felt sufficiently at home in Ireland to be interred there. And as ever in the ancient world, there was also trade in the enslaved, both to and from Ireland. The most important element of these trade ties, however, was not the goods they bought and sold, but the information they passed. As Romans and Romanized Britons interacted with the Irish, they exchanged elements of culture, and just as power of Rome was beginning to wane in the British Isles, a relatively new belief system was becoming an important part of being Roman: Christianity. The Romans may have left Britannia at the end of the 4th century, but they left behind Roman Catholicism, and when, as of this writing, nearly 70% of the Irish identity as Catholic, we might say that Rome did conquer Ireland after all, not with swords, but with ideas.
What are you gonna say with faith? Oh, that's it. The music sounds like from the... What's the game? Call of Duty? Oh. So, excuse me. So here we are, why they didn't. Well, obviously the power of the Roman Empire started waning after a few hundred years. I have to kind of look up which empire lasted the longest. Let's see. Can we find some information? What empire lasted longest? Panian Empire, 1850 years. Pandian. The Society of Southern India is considered the longest lasting empire in the history ever. It dominated trade and agriculture, not to mention having numerous fisheries and rich pearl oyster beds, and so was extremely wealthy. A series of kings ruled the Pandyan Empire during this period, which lasted from about 500 BC to 1350 AD. And they faded into obscurity upon the rise of the Kalabara dynasty in South India. Constant conflict with the kingdoms of Cholas and Pallavas saw to its decline and demise by the mid-14th century. Interesting. Then there was a Byzantine Empire, 1123 years, Silla Kingdom, 992 in Korea. Abyssinian Ethiopian Empire, 665 years. That's actually quite long. The Roman Empire lasted 499 years, like nearly 500. Oh well, that's all. Okay, guys. Excuse me. I'm tired all the time now. So, thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye.